the darkest times for an industry are the time in which an accountant is most valuable.
Are you an accountant with a continuing education requirement? You can earn free NASBA-approved CPE for listening to this episode. Just visit earmark.app in your web browser, take a short quiz, and get your certificate. Welcome to the Earmark Podcast. I'm Blake Oliver, coming to you from Boston on the Advisory Amplified Tour, recording in front of a live audience at Ned Devine's. Today, we are talking about the future of advisory, how firms unlock CFO-level services and become true strategic partners, going beyond reports to real guidance and insight. I'm joined by James Erving, Head of Sales Americas at Fathom. Welcome, James.
Thanks for having me.
And we've also got Chris Macksey, CEO of Prix Fixe Accounting.
Hey, how are you doing?
Did I say that right?
You did. You got it.
I am not a foodie, so when I see that on a menu, sometimes I like, is it Prix Fixe? Definitely not, right?
You're just thinking about it too hard.
Okay.
Prix Fixe. There you go. You're good. You're good. You don't need to get fancy.
Well, tell me then, why is your firm named after a term that I would find at a fine dining establishment?
So shockingly, we work with restaurants. So we our focus is entirely on the hospitality industry. So we work with independent restaurants, some lodging clients, and some food-based retail, and we only work with them. And so marketing to our niche by calling it Prix Fixe, and our service model is that we set the menu, much like you would the chef would at a restaurant. So the tech stack is there really aren't any options. You're leaving it up to the chef. We're choosing what the tech stack is. There's only one price point. It's Prix Fixe, and you're just going to have to enjoy the ride.
I love that. So why does that matter to you? You deliver a lot of advisory services in your firm. Tell us about that. Like, where are you at with advisory?
So we do right now, like the service interval is that we will meet with our clients on a monthly basis. We'll have an advisory call with them, walk through their numbers. But beyond that, we double down and really focus on our niche. And so I'm a cook that studied economics, and so in college, so I kind of look at things from that lens. And so we pay a lot of attention to what the trends are in the restaurant industry, what's popping off. During COVID, there was a big thing with champagne and caviar for some reason, and what's coming up, what is going to be a fad, what is going to be a trend, and then what the macroeconomic conditions of the state of the economy is and how that's going to affect restaurants. Because when the economy isn't as good, one of the first industries that's really truly affected is the restaurant and hospitality industry.
So how do you weave that knowledge of the restaurant industry into the advisory services that you're delivering, the meetings that you're having with clients?
A lot of it is we break up the time so that, we're talking about the business itself, looking at what's happening specifically to them, but then kind of zooming out and looking at like what the longer term goals are. And so restaurants rarely are finite, right? Like they're changing all the time. They're changing the business model, how they're operating. And as they're thinking about what they're doing there, we're trying to guide them into making the right choices for what the economic conditions are. So for instance, like right now, consumers really feel a lot of pain in the pocketbook. And so your, auto loan default rate is up. Credit card balances among consumers are at its highest levels. Consumer confidence is down. And so if you're thinking about opening a restaurant or you're thinking about changing your restaurant, a fine dining concept with a $175 Prix Fixe menu is probably not going to go so well right now. So we try to weave that into the conversation and have people thinking about that long term as they're running their business.
So based on what is happening in the economy more broadly, you can advise clients as to what menu items to offer, or what how to expand, or where or why not to, or any of those things.
Yeah, exactly. Like, timing is everything with any business, and it's definitely the case for a restaurant. They're dumping $500,000 to $2 million into a concept, and if you make the wrong bet, like, that's it. So making sure our clients, we came out of 2024, out of COVID, and restaurants were feeling a little bit better, and thinking about like what another concept might be. And a lot of what you decided is really hurting you right now based off of those conditions. So like right now we're talking quite a bit about value-based menus, like what affordable menus are there, like what people can feed their family for under $75, under $50, is kind of what a lot of folks are talking about right now.
So did you start with advisory first in your firm? Were you always doing advisory work?
Yes, with advisory is required at our firm.
Okay.
So like if you're working with us, you have to do the advisory, because that's the thing that kind of makes it sticky. Otherwise, if it's just the bookkeeping, if it's just the payroll, it's a commodity, right? And so if you're not giving them that advice, then they can go somewhere else. They can go somewhere cheaper. They can go to any old generalist firm and get the same thing.
I want to come back and dig in more to how you do advisory at your firm. For now, though, let's turn to James. James, you have a broad view across hundreds of firms that are doing all different types of advisory services. And I think one of the biggest challenges is for a firm that doesn't do it right now, you want to do it, and you have all these clients, and it's not clear just how or what to do, or even who to serve. So do you have some indicators that you can point firms to look at? Like, how would I know? How could I get started, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think there's a couple angles on that. One is, who's the client for the service, and then the service itself. There's identifying who out of your client base would be a good fit for advisory services. And I think it comes down to, several factors. It could be the speed of their growth, that they're going so quickly that they just need that additional hand-holding or help. It could be the size they're at. Managing their finances have become challenging for them to DIY, and they just need that additional help, but not too big that they have a CFO in house, or they have that expert in house. Could be around an event, exit planning, acquisition, acquiring, growing their business. So those are some of the trigger points probably for that type of service. And then how to get started, I think, for a firm that's not doing it yet, we see forecasting be a great first step. If firms are not doing that yet, or they're not charging for it, maybe it's a random act of advisory, the forecast becomes a great place to start, because it's driving that decision making and bringing clarity to the future.
I love that phrase, random act of advisory. I think we've all been guilty of that. I mean, we may not be attaching a value to it, and we may not be selling it, but we all do it to some extent. So tell me more about forecasting. What does that MVP look like? What is the minimum viable product for forecasting for a firm that hasn't done it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think forecasting is pretty broad too. I mean, as probably a lot of you know, like there's a short-term cash flow forecast, which is really driven, off of the transaction base, and can tell you, what's my cash going to be in a week or 2 weeks. And that's probably where most small businesses are going to want to start, is, because it's at that survival layer. The step up from that, I would say, is more of the planning, more of the FP&A piece, and that's typically more of a forecast that's driven off of the financials that has closed books behind it, and it has more of a long-term view in mind. And so that's going to give you more of that, I would say, like 3 to 12 month and beyond picture. And then you can also layer on the business plans above the baseline, with that. So building that baseline, building scenarios, and then being able to run scenarios and events quickly on the fly, maybe on a meeting or, after a conversation with clients.
And who in my firm can do this? Does it have to be me? Does it have to be a partner?
That's a good question. I would say it probably depends on your staff and training level, right? And comfortability, but there are tools out there that can help with it now. You don't have to build an entire Excel model customized to a client to get started with it.
Well, I'll turn that question to you, Chris. Do you do forecasting? And,
Who doesn't?
who does it? Well, let's start with, do you do forecasting? And if so, what kind?
We don't do cash flow forecasting just because restaurants have such tight cash flow that
There's no point.
yeah, you're off 5% and that just your cash flow projection's shot. So we generally will do a budget for them for a year out. And then we'll look at what we think the market's going to bear for that, and then look at what their past numbers are, and then kind of make a decision based off of that. But for really cash flow type businesses, it's pretty difficult. As far as who does it, we do have.
Well, so before you do that, what is the forecasting that you're doing? It's mainly budgeting type.
It's mainly just
okay.
budgeting,
So you're but that's a forecast, right? You're creating a budget. Who does that?
So our director of advisory does a lot of that, but we also try to involve the accountant on it so that they get a little bit of experience, thinking about that from is more of a proactive thought rather than only looking at the historical. I think a lot of accountants maybe think that that's kind of a scary thing to do. But once they actually do it for the first time, they realize, oh, I'm just looking at the last 3 years. I'm kind of rolling it forward, making an educated guess on what it's going to be. And that's really all it is. So I think it's a good opportunity for accountants to be able to kind of step up to the next role. And
And what is the deliverable of that?
So the deliverable is we will meet with them, look at that budget for the year, talk about it, because they may have some insight to the local economy that might be our historical basis might not have picked up on. In urban environments, there might be construction on that street, and so next year's not looking so hot, and so. We'll talk about that before finalizing, kind of work through those numbers. And then from there, we'll do a budget versus actuals and QBO.
James, what is the biggest misconception of advisory services?
Honestly, I think there's still confusion about what it is in the first place. And maybe a lack of definition in the industry about what's being talked about when we're talking about advisory. So I think that's the first point of confusion is just what's the act, like you asked, what's the deliverable? Like, what are we actually talking about doing here?
Well, first, let's define it.
Yeah.
What is it? What does it mean? What is it to you? Or Chris, do you want to take that? If you had to define advisory services, you gave me a look. Sorry, I put you on the spot here.
It's any of the work that you can't scope really very easily, and it's not CAS in accounting in my case. And
so you consider it separate.
Yeah.
Totally separate from that. And you do that on top of it.
Yes.
Because they get lumped together. CAS and advisory tend to get
Yes. Well, the
Long
AICPA did us a big favor by calling it client accounting and advisory services. So that's interesting that you think of it as separate.
Mhm.
So as you have your client accounting services or your, what do you call it in your firm? Is that what you call it, Cass?
Yeah.
And then advisory is its own thing. Is it done by a different team?
Yep. Different person.
Different person. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. James, is that what you see, or is it mixed up?
Yeah, I mean, I default to Chris on this, but what I think of it is like really being involved in the decision-making process rather than just the delivery of information.
Say that again.
So instead of just delivering information, which
Yeah.
is, the CAS output, it's actually being integral to the decision-making in the business. That's how I would define it.
I've heard it defined as having an opinion, right? Well, to be involved in the decision making,
Yeah.
you have to have an opinion.
Yep.
And I have run into so many accountants who just won't have an opinion about anything other than the accuracy of the financial statements.
It's very true. You look at the historical, right? And you develop an opinion based off of for instance, our case, like food cost is trickling up. Is it that something's changed in the kitchen, or is it just inflation that's causing that number to gradually rise over time? And it's an opinion of
right. You're going beyond just what has happened,
yeah,
and asking the question, why is it happening, and what will happen in the future, given that. So what does the deliverable look like, James? In let's talk about what is the ideal forecast?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Fathom, what the typical output that a firm is delivering is a probably a 3 to 12 month cash flow forecast, but that's a three-way. So it's forecasting the profit and loss, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement. And
you're also producing the you're producing the typical financial statements, the historical ones.
Correct.
And then you're adding on the pro forma.
Yep. Okay. Yep. So then you're adding on the forecast and then reporting every month against that forecast variance, as well as the budget.
Yep. Okay. Anything else in there? I mean, that's basically the core of a forecast. Anything you would add, Chris, to like a that kind of package?
Not to the forecast. Okay. No.
Any other like advisory deliverables you see firms providing?
We usually are doing a lot of metrics. Our client base is largely visual people, and the financial literacy is usually pretty low. Like in my case, I cooked for 10, 15 years. I didn't see a P&L until I started doing accounting. And so putting it into visual terms is a really helpful, useful aid to having them start to understand the financials. So we look at what your food cost is, what your labor costs are. We start the narrative of understanding what the difference is between your bottom line, your net income, and what cash flow is, because no non-accountant understands what the difference is. And so we try to put all of those things into visual form so that they can keep seeing it over and over again and slowly start to digest it.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that and say, the metrics are so critical. We see, financial ratios that are customized to that industry, right? So labor costs as a percentage of sales, sizing everything to revenue to be able to then compare across clients for firms is really powerful. And, like Chris working with restaurants has a really high quality data set to work off of. And firms also, that the data is sound. You've done the book. So it's the highest quality comparison you could make. And then being able to aggregate all of that data, make comparisons and benchmark basically within your clients and then to the industry to understand the difference. There's pretty common firms that are specializing in industries. Yeah,
that's a really good point, because right now it's a terrible environment for restaurants. It's been, at best it's 0% over last year. At worst, it's 20% down. And I think that a lot of business owners in environments like this are sitting there going, is it me? Like, am I doing something wrong that's causing my business to tank like that? And when you can actually see like that data and see it for yourself and validate it for yourself, you know that no, it's not you. It's just the economy.
And is that due to rising food costs, inflation in that regard, people spending less, a combination?
It's people's fear of the economy right now and not wanting to spend. You know, people's pocketbooks are feeling tighter and tighter, and you know, the first thing that goes when you don't feel like you have a lot of money in the bank account is you don't eat out as much and you don't travel as much. So it's always been kind of a leading indicator for how the economy is doing is how the industry is doing.
Do you ever regret concentrating your business in a single industry?
COVID was an interesting time for me. I don't. I think the times in which the darkest times for an industry are the time in which an accountant is most valuable. We actually had a lot of growth during COVID because a lot of accountants or a lot of restaurant owners couldn't get their accountant to help them with their PPP loans or their EIDLs or their ERTC, and so we were able to help a lot of people with that, and it was okay for us. It was great. All this gray showed up because of that, but and this year I think is a lot like that too, where we're starting to see a lot of people come to us because they're not getting the advice and they're feeling really nervous about their business right now.
So going back to that metrics idea, giving clients these metrics that are not part of the traditional financial statements, what does that look like? Is this a document that is prepared for them? Is this part of the financial statements? Is this like how do you show these metrics?
So the one that I like doing is I love doing like a 12-month look back on like a set of metrics. So like we'll use food cost and we'll say, let's look at what the last 12 months looked like. Let's look at what the last year before that looked like. And then what the rolling aggregate is. So like you can see like what is happening. Like some months it'll kind of bounce all over the place,
Right.
but like you can see what it is on the aggregate and get an idea of like what the trend is.
That's such a good point because a lot of times I see the metrics presented just as here's the number for the month, no comparison. And it's kind of useless without that.
Yeah.
So you're doing trailing 12 months
Yeah.
on all your metrics.
Yeah. I mean, if your food cost was 28% this month, that's good for like a restaurant. But if it was 23% the last 12 months, like something bad's happened.
Yeah, you also need to have that. I mean, for restaurants, other similar businesses, there's seasonality often, right? And so being able to have that year-on-year comparison is critical too, I would imagine.
What about like non-financial metrics? What do you track?
For us, like our lodging clients are big on that. They have a lot, and they're kind of very like demand based. So like you have like your number of rooms sold, your ADR, your occupancy rates, like all of those numbers are not something that you will see surfaced in QBO or in Fathom pulled from QBO, but we use a lot of them. It's probably one of my favorite features of Fathom is to be able to incorporate them and then also use the formula to be able to like apply it to like revenue and cost numbers.
Right, create that KPI and show it every month. And what you can, I haven't seen Fathom in a while. I was a customer in my days, and I remember you could like it was very beautiful the way you could see which KPIs were up and which were down.
Yeah, we try to have visuals around everything, but having all your custom KPIs, having the target that you've set for the client, based on benchmark or based on, variation on a client basis, and then having that indicator. Yeah.
I feel like just bringing in operational metrics and reporting on those over time is such a huge value add and would really differentiate any firm from one that's just producing a P&L and a balance sheet and a statement of cash flows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
the more operational metrics that you can bring into it, the deeper the data is. If your revenue is going down, right, like the last couple of years, right, inflation we've had going up, revenue's been fairly flat. That doesn't mean that business is flat. That just means that there's less people and they're paying a little bit more, but like there are less asses in seats. Like there's not as much business going on, and you might not have seen that if you didn't bring that information into Fathom.
All right, to take us out, it's tough to get started. James, do you have one piece of advice for a firm that is looking to get started in advisory? Where should they begin?
I mean, I think it's been said today, from an approach, asking a lot of questions and just really being curious about your client's business. I think Chris may be an expert on restaurants, but it's hard for someone to be an expert on somebody else's business, right? So you're always going to know less than them, but just being comfortable asking questions to really dig in and discover what you need to know. And then to get started, there's great tools out there to help with the deliverable side.
Really?
As someone, yeah. There are tools.
Don't do it in Excel, is what we're saying.
Yeah. Be efficient with your time. Yeah.
And Chris, I take it your answer is going to be go work for 10 to 15 years as a chef, and then you're ready.
I would,
Actually, how much did that help you?
a lot.
A lot.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a cult industry, and that like if you're in, you're in. If you're out, you're out. So it helps a lot specifically with that.
So is it really like The Bear?
There's a little bit of trauma there.
Yeah. Great show if you haven't seen it.
But I would say like I would try to find something that you're passionate about. I would say like try to narrow down the industries that you're looking at, and then spend more time looking at that industry as a whole rather than trying to do everything really well. Try to do a couple of things well. That's how our firm started. We started as a generalist firm, and we niched down. And so thinking about like what those businesses that like actually like get you really excited and like really make you think about things, I would start there and see how you can be helpful.
I think that's a great way to wrap this. Chris, James, thanks so much for sharing your expertise here on the podcast, and let's give him a hand.
Thanks for having us on.
Always a pleasure.